Saving feels like pouring water into a bucket with a hole in it. Month after month, the balance barely moves, and a responsible choice starts to feel like a quiet punishment. But there's a point, usually invisible at the start, when a simple rule stops being theory and starts behaving like leverage. That's where this story begins. Harry didn't look reckless from the outside. He was 29, worked operations at a mid-sized logistics company, and made $5,400 a month after taxes. His rent for a modest one-bedroom was $1,650. Utilities averaged $180. Car payment, $340. Insurance, $165. Gas, $160. Student loans, $420. Groceries, $420. Phone and internet, $130. Subscriptions, $55. Add it up and the math didn't scream disaster. And yet, every payday ended the same way. He'd move a little to savings, $200, sometimes $300, then watch it evaporate. A tire. A dentist bill. A birthday weekend he owed himself. By the end of each month, the savings account looked like it had been edited back down to zero. He wasn't failing loudly. He was failing quietly. The stakes weren't dramatic, but they were real. Harry didn't fear poverty as an abstract idea. He feared the small humiliations that come before it, the credit card decline at the grocery store, the phone call to ask for an extension, the way a minor emergency could turn into a personal referendum. He wanted to feel steady. Not rich. Just steady. Here's the twist. The problem wasn't that he didn't save. The problem was that saving, the way he was doing it, had no shape. And without shape, it never felt like progress. Month 1 started like most months. He opened his banking app after work, thumb hovering over the numbers like they might rearrange themselves if he waited long enough. Checking, $1,112. Savings, $684. Credit card, $2,980. He'd paid it down before. It always climbed back. Harry told himself the same story responsible people tell when the math is confusing: I just need more discipline. He tried the usual tactics. He deleted delivery apps. He made coffee at home for a week. He set a vague goal, save $10,000, and then felt guilty whenever he spent $18 on lunch. The guilt didn't build wealth. It just built resentment. His spending wasn't one big leak. It was dozens of small ones. He didn't buy designer clothes. He bought convenience. He didn't take luxury vacations. He took small breaks that seemed harmless until they stacked. And he didn't have a plan for the money he wasn't spending. So whatever he managed to save sat there like a target. His biggest frustration was emotional, not mathematical. Each time he saved, he expected relief. Instead, he felt exposed. Like he was building something fragile, something any random event could knock over. Then, at a friend's barbecue, someone made an offhand comment while refilling a drink: I stopped thinking of saving as willpower. I just gave my money lanes. Harry laughed politely, but the phrase stayed. Lanes. Not goals. Not guilt. Lanes. That night he went home and dug a paperback off his shelf, Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money. He didn't reread it. He skimmed until a sentence snagged him: behavior matters more than spreadsheets. The point isn't perfection. It's consistency under real life. He shut the book and did something small, almost unconvincing. He opened a note on his phone and wrote 3 numbers. Not a budget. Just 3 numbers. And then something shifts when you stop chasing motivation and start designing constraints. The next morning, still in his work clothes, Harry typed 50-30-20 budget into a search bar. The idea was almost offensively simple: 50% of take-home for needs, 30% for wants, 20% for savings and debt payoff. He'd heard of it before. He dismissed it because it sounded like advice for people who didn't live in the real world. But now he wasn't looking for magic. He was looking for lanes. With $5,400 coming in each month, the lanes were clear on paper. Needs, $2,700. Wants, $1,620. Savings and debt, $1,080. His immediate reaction was to scoff. His rent alone was $1,650. Add the rest of his fixed bills and his needs category was already pushing past $3,000. The rule felt like another standard he couldn't meet, another system designed for someone else's life. This is the part most people miss. The rule isn't a judgment. It's a diagnostic. Harry didn't need the numbers to be perfect. He needed them to reveal the truth. If his needs were above 50%, that wasn't a moral failure. It was a signal. A map. So he did a quiet inventory. Not with shame. With curiosity. Rent $1,650. Utilities $180. Car and insurance $505. Gas $160. Student loan minimum $420. Groceries $420. Phone and internet $130. That put his needs around $3,465, roughly 64% of his take-home. So the structure wasn't telling him, try harder. It was telling him, your needs are eating your future. The guilt softened. In its place was something colder and clearer, a problem that could be solved. He didn't slash everything overnight. He didn't announce a new lifestyle. He made one decision: he'd treat the rule like gravity. Not negotiable, not emotional. Just present. Month 1, he set up 2 automatic transfers on payday. $540 to a separate debt plus buffer account. $540 to savings. The numbers weren't heroic. They were symmetrical. Easy to remember. Hard to argue with. Then he waited for reality to challenge him. It always did. Here's the twist. The first challenge wasn't an emergency. It was boredom. Month 2 didn't bring a crisis. It brought silence. No big wins. No sudden freedom. Just the slow discipline of watching the lanes hold. Harry noticed something uncomfortable. When he wasn't overspending, time felt longer. Weeknights felt plain. Saturdays felt empty. The little dopamine hits, delivery, spontaneous shopping, quick outings, had been filling space. Without them, he had to confront the quiet. That's why saving can feel pointless. Not because it doesn't work, but because it doesn't entertain. He still had his wants category. $1,620 was not nothing. But the lane changed the feeling. Before, spending was a reflex. Now it was a choice with a ceiling. When he went out for drinks, he saw the number in his head like a speed limit. When he bought something online, he felt the trade-off in a way that wasn't shameful, just factual. Month 3, his savings balance crossed $2,000. It should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like a target. That's the other quiet truth. The first real savings you build doesn't feel like security. It feels like temptation. It's money you can touch, money that could solve immediate discomfort. And Harry's discomfort wasn't dramatic. It was the daily friction of being a human with bills and moods. He almost broke the lane over something absurdly small, a weekend trip his friends planned last minute. He could afford it. Technically. But it would pull from the wrong lane. It would turn his system back into a guessing game. He told them he couldn't make it. Not because he was broke. Because he had a plan. After he hung up, he stared at the wall and felt something unfamiliar, a kind of loneliness that looked like maturity. And then something shifts when the sacrifice isn't money. It's identity. It happened in month 4, on a Tuesday that started like any other. Harry's car made a sound it hadn't made before, a low grinding that didn't go away when he turned the radio up. By lunch, the dashboard lit up with a warning light. By 5 p.m., he was in a mechanic's waiting room, pretending not to watch the estimate print. $1,280. Brakes and rotors. Immediate. Old Harry would have done the same ritual, swipe the credit card, promise himself he'd catch up, feel the familiar shame, and then quietly resent the whole idea of saving. New Harry felt the surge of panic anyway. The body doesn't update as fast as the plan. But then he opened his banking app and saw the debt plus buffer account sitting there with $1,910. He could pay it. No credit card. No scrambling. No calling anyone. Just a transfer. The moment should have been triumphant. It wasn't. It was quiet. Almost anticlimactic. He paid, sat in his car, and realized he was waiting for the emotional crash that never came. Here's the twist. The emergency didn't break him. It proved him. That night, he didn't celebrate. He didn't post about adulting. He didn't even tell his friends. He made dinner, washed the dishes, and wrote a sentence in a notebook: "I am the kind of person who doesn't panic." That was the conflict scene, but it didn't look like a movie. It looked like a man choosing a new identity without applause. The point isn't the breaks. It's the pattern. Because now Harry had evidence. Not hope. Evidence. And evidence is what makes boring feel powerful. Year 1 arrived without fireworks. By then, Harry had repeated the lanes enough times that they felt less like a rule and more like a default. He still made mistakes. But the mistakes were contained. That's when he named the system, because naming makes things portable. He called it the Quiet Allocation Framework. It had 4 stages, and he didn't reveal them to anyone. He just used them. Stage 1 was stabilize. Build a buffer that can absorb normal life. Not catastrophes. Normal life. Car repairs. Medical copays. A broken phone. Stage 2 was seal. Stop the silent bleed. Subscriptions, fees, impulse spending that pretends to be small. Stage 3 was stack. Automate the 20% lane so it grows without decision-making. Stage 4 was stealth. Keep lifestyle growth slower than income growth, even when you can afford more. This is the part most people miss. Frameworks aren't for motivation. They're for memory. When life gets loud, you don't rise to your intentions. You fall to your defaults. Harry set thresholds. Buffer goal, $3,000, then $6,000. Credit card goal, under $1,000, then 0. Student loans, extra $300 a month once the buffer hit $6,000. Month 9, he hit $6,000 in combined buffer and savings. Month 10, his credit card balance dipped below $1,000. He expected to feel proud. He mostly felt calmer. Like the world had turned the volume down. And then something shifts when calm becomes addictive. The next lever wasn't dramatic. It was logistical. Month 11, Harry renegotiated his car insurance and shaved $35 a month. Not life-changing. But it went straight into the 20% lane. He switched his phone plan and saved $22. He cut 2 subscriptions and saved $18. These weren't sacrifices. They were edits. He started cooking 4 dinners a week, not 7, because absolutism always breaks. The point isn't purity. It's repeatability. By year 2, his take-home had risen slightly, $5, $6.50 a month after a raise. He didn't inflate his lifestyle to match. Instead, he let the lanes widen. Needs stayed roughly stable. Wants expanded a little. The 20% lane became heavier. He increased it to 25% without telling anyone, because the stealth part mattered now. He also did something that felt almost childish. He created a future Harry account. It wasn't an investment portfolio yet. It was a holding place. A signal to himself that money could be assigned to a person he hadn't met. The results were still slow. That's the price of sustainable. But the slowness stopped feeling like punishment and started feeling like proof. Month 18, he had $9,400 across buffer and savings. Credit card, $0. Student loans, down from $38,000 to $29,500. The point isn't the numbers. It's the pattern. And here's the twist. The pattern was about to demand a bigger move. Year 3 was when the quiet allocation framework reached the part most people never get to, because they quit earlier. The boredom becomes unbearable long before the leverage arrives. Harry's rent went up. Not drastically, but enough to pressure the needs lane. He could afford it. But it threatened the structure. That's what systems do, they make trade-offs visible. He considered moving. The thought felt like regression, like admitting he couldn't keep up. But then he remembered the framework. Stage 4 wasn't look successful. It was stealth, protect the gap between income and spending. So he did the unglamorous thing. He moved to a slightly smaller place 15 minutes farther from downtown. Rent dropped to $1,420. It wasn't a downgrade in comfort as much as a downgrade in image. That's where the identity conflict returned. Friends teased him lightly. "You're really going to live out there?" His parents asked if he was okay. Harry smiled and said it was fine. He didn't explain. Explanations invite debate. Systems don't need applause. Month 2 after the move, his needs lane loosened. The breathing room returned. He funneled the difference into the 20% lane, then pushed that lane higher again. Year 3, month 6, his accounts crossed $25,000. Not invested aggressively, just accumulated and positioned, buffer, retirement contributions, and a growing future Harry account. He realized something unsettling. If he kept going, his life would start to split into 2 stories. The story people saw, and the story his accounts told. And then something shifts when you stop optimizing for today and start designing for year 5. The handoff moment arrived in year 4, not as a windfall, but as an invitation. Harry's manager offered him a new role. More responsibility. More pay. A chance to step into a senior position that would take his take-home to roughly $6,700 a month. It came with an unspoken expectation: upgrade the lifestyle. Dress sharper. Live closer. Look like the role. This was the bend in the road. The moment where stealth wealth either becomes real or becomes a costume. Harry didn't say yes immediately. He went home and ran the lanes. At $6,700, 50% needs would be $3,350. 30% wants, $2,010. 20% savings and debt, $1,340. But Harry knew better now. The numbers weren't rules. They were levers. He could push the 20% lane to 30% if he kept stealth intact. Here's the twist. The promotion wasn't the payoff. The promotion was the test. Because with higher income comes the most dangerous expense: expectations. The pressure to convert money into visible proof. Harry felt it in his chest. The temptation to finally live. To buy relief through consumption. To make the struggle look worth it. That night, he wrote 2 sentences. The point isn't the salary. It's the gap. The point isn't X. It's the pattern. He accepted the role. And he made a private decision. The extra money would not change his life for 12 months. Not outwardly. Not materially. He would let the raise become invisible on purpose. That was the handoff. Motivation handed control to systems. Identity handed control to structure. And then something shifts when your best move is the one nobody notices. By year 5, Harry had become the person he used to imagine was someone else. His monthly flow looked boring, and that was the point. Needs stayed under control. Wants were planned, not policed. The savings lane ran automatically. He contributed steadily to retirement accounts. He built an emergency fund that could cover months, not days. He didn't buy a flashy car. He didn't move into a luxury building. He didn't post milestones. The invisibility protected him from 2 threats: other people's expectations and his own. This is stealth wealth in its real form: lifestyle lag. The discipline to let your finances mature before your image does. When coworkers talked about new watches and upgraded apartments, Harry listened without judgment. He wasn't above it. He just didn't need it. He'd learned that the quickest way to stay broke is to make your spending a performance. The quiet allocation framework stayed simple. Stabilize, so life can't bully you. Seal, so leaks don't masquerade as normal. Stack, so savings happen without debate. Stealth, so lifestyle doesn't eat the gap. And because he kept the gap, he gained options. Real ones. The quiet kind, the ability to take a day off without panic. The ability to handle an emergency without debt. The ability to say no to a job that disrespected him. Here's the twist. The win wasn't the number. It was the silence around the number. No drama. No scramble. Just stability, repeated. And then something shifts when the goal stops being more and becomes enough. Tonight, the move is smaller than people want, and that's why it works. First, calculate take-home pay for the month. Second, draw 3 lanes: needs, wants, and future. Start with an honest split, even if it's not perfect. Let the structure diagnose the pressure points. Then automate the future lane on payday, even if it's modest. Protect that automation like it's a habit, not a bill. If the needs lane is too heavy, don't spiral. Adjust reality, negotiate, downgrade, restructure. If the wants lane is chaotic, Don't punish yourself. Contain it. Give it a ceiling and let it breathe inside that boundary. The point isn't extreme frugality. It's repeatable allocation. If Harry's story proves anything, it's that saving feels pointless when it's random. It feels powerful when it has lanes, thresholds, and a framework that can survive a bad month. And if the boring approach feels slow, remember, slow is often the only speed that lasts. This is educational content, not financial advice. If this kind of quiet, systems-first wealth building is the philosophy that makes sense, stay close to the channel. The next story won't be louder. It'll be sharper.